The signal came on a Tuesday. Across the galaxy, every listening station heard it at once. The sound was old, impossibly old, carried on quantum waves that had traveled through the void for 80,000 years. It was a distress call, written in mathematics that every thinking species could understand. The message was simple and heartbreaking. "We are dying. Please respond. These are our coordinates." In the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, 7 species gathered to discuss what should be done. The hall was vast, built to accommodate beings of wildly different shapes and sizes. Insectoid philosophers stood beside crystalline beings who hummed with inner light. Aquatic creatures floated in sealed tanks, while feathered diplomats preened their crests nervously. The Velnar representative spoke first, its mandibles clicking softly. "This signal comes from the Void Scar. That region has been dead for longer than our oldest civilizations. Whatever called for help is gone now." A Thurim delegate, its crystalline body refracting the chamber's light into rainbows, added its agreement. "The journey would take centuries. Even our fastest ships cannot reach that distance quickly. We would waste resources traveling to a grave." The Okath ambassador, floating in its tank of dark water, brought up the most damning evidence. 16 expeditions have entered the Void Scar over the millennia. Not one has returned. It is a place where ships go to die. Around the chamber, heads nodded. Crests bobbed. Lights pulsed in agreement. The decision was unanimous and practical. They would not respond. The signal was a ghost calling from an empty tomb, and ghosts could not be saved. In a smaller chamber, the human delegation listened to the council's decision with growing frustration. Humanity was the newest member of this ancient coalition, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 150 years ago. They were young, reckless, and viewed with polite condescension by the elder species. Commander Hyunwoo stood and addressed his fellow humans. He was a tall man with gray threading through his dark hair, a career officer who had spent his life pushing humanity toward the stars. His voice was quiet but firm. "They're not going. None of them. They heard a cry for help from 80,000 years ago, and they're choosing to do nothing." Around the table, the other human delegates shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Nari, a linguist who had spent years studying dead alien languages, spoke up. "The council makes logical points. The distance is extreme. The danger is real. Whatever sent that signal is almost certainly dead." "Almost certainly," Hyunwoo repeated. "But not definitely. What if someone is still there? What if they've been waiting all this time for someone to answer?" Engineer Tae Yang, a stocky man with permanently oil-stained hands, laughed bitterly. "Then they've been waiting 80,000 years. Another few decades won't matter." "Won't it?" Hyunwoo turned to face the group. "Every species in this galaxy heard that call. Every single one chose to ignore it. If we do the same, what does that make us? Just another species that looks away when help is needed?" Pilot Bora, the youngest in the room, leaned forward. Her eyes were bright with excitement. "You want to go? You actually want to mount an expedition to the Void Scar?" "Yes." The room erupted in argument. It was foolish. It was wasteful. It was a suicide mission dressed up as heroism. Earth needed its resources for defense, for expansion, for 100 more practical concerns than chasing a signal older than human civilization. Hyunwoo let them argue. Then he raised his hand, and slowly the room quieted. "I'm not ordering anyone to come. This will be a volunteer mission. We'll call it the Dandelion Initiative. Dandelions scatter their seeds on the wind, hoping some will take root. We'll scatter ourselves into the void, hoping to find someone who still needs us." Dr. Nari was the first to stand. "I volunteer. If there's even a chance of finding a living member of this species, the linguistic and cultural data would be invaluable." Tae Yang sighed heavily, then stood as well. "Someone needs to keep the ship running. Might as well be me." Bora was already on her feet, grinning. I'm the best pilot Earth has. You'll need me." One by one, others stood. Scientists, engineers, medics, soldiers. Not everyone volunteered, but enough did. More than enough. The news reached the Galactic Council quickly. The human delegation requested an audience to announce their decision. The chamber filled again, with representatives curious about what the newest species wanted to say. Hyun-woo stood before them, very small in that vast space, and delivered humanity's answer. "The Galactic Council has chosen not to respond to the signal from the Void Scar. We understand your reasoning. We respect your decision. But humanity will be mounting an expedition. We're going to answer that call." The chamber filled with the alien equivalent of gasps and murmurs. The Velnar representative leaned forward. "You understand this is almost certainly futile? That you are risking lives and resources for nothing?" "We understand the risks. We're going anyway." "Why?" The question came from the Thurum delegate, genuine confusion in its chiming voice. "Why waste so much for such a small chance of success?" Hyun-woo looked up at the assembled species, at civilizations millions of years old, and spoke simply. "Because someone asked for help. Because 80,000 years ago, a dying people sent a message into the void, hoping someone would care enough to respond. Every species in this galaxy heard them. Only we're answering. Maybe that makes us foolish." "Maybe that makes us human. We're going to find out which." The council had no response to that. They watched as the human delegation left the chamber, already making plans for their impossible journey. In orbit above Earth, construction began on a ship called the Resilience. It would carry 200 volunteers into the unknown, chasing a signal older than human memory, reaching for people who were almost certainly dust. But only almost certainly. And for humans, that tiny chance was enough. The galaxy watched and wondered if humanity's compassion was wisdom or madness. Time would tell. Time always did. The Resilience launched on a cold morning in March. 200 humans boarded the ship knowing they might never see Earth again. The journey to the Void Scar would take 80 years, even using the experimental drive that bent space around the vessel. Most of the crew would arrive as old men and women, if they arrived at all. They established a rotation system. The crew would sleep in cryogenic chambers, taking turns waking for 5-year shifts to maintain the ship and continue studying the ancient signal. Hyun-woo took the first watch, along with 20 others. As Earth shrank behind them and the stars stretched into lines, he felt the weight of his decision settle onto his shoulders. Dr. Nari spent her waking hours obsessed with the signal. She had brought every piece of linguistic analysis equipment Earth possessed, and she used all of it. The message was complex, layered with meaning that revealed itself slowly. She made her first major breakthrough 3 years into the journey. "They called themselves the Prathara," she announced at the weekly crew meeting. Her eyes were bright with excitement and lack of sleep. "I've been able to decode more of their language structure. The signal isn't just a distress call, it's also a warning." Hyun-woo leaned forward. "A warning about what?" "They were fleeing something. They called it the Silence. I don't have enough context to know exactly what that means, but the terror in their message is clear. Whatever the Silence was, it scared them badly enough to abandon everything and run." The news spread through the ship like cold water. They were chasing people who had been running from something. The question everyone asked was simple and terrible. What if that something was still there? At the 40-year mark, halfway through their journey, a Galactic Council patrol intercepted them. The alien ship was sleek and beautiful, built by a civilization that had perfected space travel while humans still lived in caves. It matched their velocity and hailed them. Ambassador Kyle of the Velnar appeared on their view screen, its insectoid features unreadable to human eyes. "Resilience, we have been monitoring your progress. The Council requests that you reconsider your mission and return to Earth." Han Wu, now a man in his 70s who had spent decades in cryosleep, faced the alien calmly. We're not turning back. Your homeworld faces threats. There are territorial disputes with neighboring systems. Pirates raid your outer colonies. Earth needs its best and brightest, yet you waste them chasing ghosts. We're not wasting anything. We're keeping a promise. Kyle's mandibles clicked in what might have been frustration. A promise made to whom? The dead. You owe nothing to a species that has been extinct for millennia. We owe it to ourselves, Hyun-woo said quietly. If we only help people when it's convenient, when it's safe, when it's profitable, then what are we? We heard a call for help. We're answering, that's all. The council ship departed, its crew disturbed by humanity's stubborn conviction. Kale would report back that the humans were continuing their foolish quest, driven by emotion rather than logic. The council would note this in their files and wonder if humanity would survive its own compassion. But not everyone on the Resilience shared Hyun-woo's faith. As the years crawled past and the crew rotated through their shifts, doubts grew. Security Chief Dong-ha became the voice of that doubt. He was a practical man, a former soldier who believed in protecting your own before helping strangers. We should turn back, he said during a heated meeting in the ship's common area. Earth needs us. Our families need us. We're chasing a signal from the Stone Age, traveling to a place called the Void Scar. Even the name tells us it's death. Others nodded in agreement. The journey was taking its toll. Equipment failures were becoming more common. 3 crew members had died from complications with the cryo-sleep process. The ship that had left Earth bright with hope now felt tired and old. Hyun-woo listened to all the arguments. He didn't dismiss them or call the doubters cowards. He simply said, "Anyone who wants to turn back, I understand. We can separate the shuttle and send you home. No judgment, no shame. This mission was always voluntary." Nobody took him up on the offer, but the tension remained. The crew was fracturing, divided between those who still believed in their mission and those who thought they were chasing fairy tales. Then Bora found something. She had been running long-range scans, more out of habit than hope, when her instruments picked up an anomaly. She stared at the readings for a full minute before trusting herself to speak. "Commander, you need to see this." Hyun-woo came to the bridge, moving carefully in the low gravity. "What is it?" "A power signature, at the coordinates from the signal. It's faint, but it's there. Something is still generating energy." The bridge went silent. Dr. Nari, now a woman in her 80s with silver hair and sharp eyes, checked the readings herself. "She's right. That's not residual heat or background radiation. That's an active power source." The news spread through the ship like fire. The doubters went quiet. Dong-ha stared at the readings and said nothing. After 49 years of travel, after decades of doubt and sacrifice, they had proof. Something was still there. Hyun-woo stood on the bridge and looked at the screens showing the void ahead. Somewhere in that darkness, someone had been waiting for 80,000 years. Someone who had sent a message into the infinite dark hoping for mercy, for compassion, for someone to care. "All hands prepare for arrival," he announced over the ship-wide communication system. "We're almost there. Let's finish what we started." The Resilience pushed forward through the dark, carrying 200 humans who had gambled their lives on the belief that answering a cry for help was never a waste. The Void Scar waited ahead, filled with the wreckage of dead civilizations and the grave of the Prathara. But somewhere in that grave, a light still burned, and humanity was coming to answer the call. The Void Scar was a graveyard. The Resilience emerged from its final jump into a region of space that looked like the aftermath of an apocalypse. Broken megastructures drifted in the dark, their purpose long forgotten. Fragments of what might have been Dyson spheres floated past the ship. Shattered ring worlds tumbled slowly through the void, their atmospheres long since bled away into space. Bora piloted the ship carefully through the debris field, her old hands steady on the controls. She was 79 years old now, but still the best pilot humanity had. There must have been dozens of civilizations here once, maybe hundreds. Dr. Nari recorded everything, her equipment capturing images of structures that defied human understanding. These ruins are from different eras. Some are older than others by millions of years. This wasn't one extinction event, something kept coming back. At the center of the dead zone, they found it. A world ship, massive beyond anything humans had ever built. It was the size of a small moon, a vessel designed to carry an entire civilization through the stars. Unlike everything else in the Void Scar, it was intact. That's where the power signature is coming from, Bora said, bringing the resilience alongside the alien vessel. Someone left the lights on. Hyunwoo assembled a boarding team. 20 people, including himself, Dr. Nari, and Tai Yang. They suited up and crossed the gap between ships, mag boots carrying them across the void. The world ship's hull was pitted and scarred, but a docking port still functioned, opening for them like a mouth. Inside, they found a city frozen in time. The Prathera had built their world ship to last forever. Streets of crystalline material ran between buildings that seemed to grow organically from the ship's structure. Gardens stood empty, their soil still rich but barren. In the center of the city, a great tower reached toward the artificial sky. "It's beautiful," Nari whispered, her voice small in the vast emptiness. Tai Yang was more practical. "It's dead. Whatever happened here, it happened a long time ago." They moved deeper into the world ship, following the power signature. It led them to a massive chamber beneath the central tower. Inside were thousands of stasis pods, arranged in neat rows. Most were dark, their occupants long since gone to dust. But 17 pods still glowed with soft blue light. Nari approached the nearest pod carefully, her scanner working. "These are still active, still drawing power. There's someone inside." Hyunwoo felt his heart hammering. After 80,000 years? Their technology is far beyond ours. These pods are masterworks of engineering. Tai Yang was examining the power systems, his eyes wide with admiration. They're connected to the ship's core, drawing just enough energy to maintain stasis. Whoever designed this meant for these people to last forever if necessary. The team worked quickly to access the world ship's computer systems. Dr. Nari had spent decades learning the Prathara language, and now she put that knowledge to use. The ship's archives opened for her, and she downloaded everything. The story they found was heartbreaking. The Prathara had been a peaceful species, advanced and wise. They had unlocked the secrets of consciousness and built a civilization that spanned multiple star systems. Then they encountered something that shattered their entire understanding of the universe. They called it the Silence. It came from beyond the galaxy, a thing that existed in dimensions humans couldn't perceive. It consumed star systems, feeding on sentient thought itself. Where it passed, civilizations simply stopped. Not destroyed, just erased, as if they had never existed at all. The Prathera tried to fight. They failed. They tried to hide. It found them. In the end, they ran. They built the world ship and filled it with their people. Millions of Prathara fled into the void, hoping to find somewhere the Silence couldn't reach. But the journey took its toll. Systems failed. Resources ran out. People died. In the end, only 17,000 remained. They placed themselves in stasis and sent their signal, a message thrown into the void like a bottle into an infinite ocean. Then they waited for someone to answer. 80,000 years passed. The world ship drifted. Its power core slowly died. The stasis pods failed one by one, their occupants never waking. Until only 17 remained, the absolute last of the Prathara civilization. hanging on by the thinnest thread of technology and hope. "We need to wake them," Hyun-woo said. Tae-yang looked worried. "Commander, we don't fully understand this technology. If we make a mistake, we could kill them." "They're already dying. That power core won't last another decade. If we don't wake them now, nobody will." It took 3 days to prepare. Tae-yang and his team studied the stasis systems, learning how they worked through careful observation and translation of ancient technical manuals. Dr. Nari prepared to make first contact with a species that had been asleep since before humans learned to make fire. When they were ready, Hyun-woo gave the order. "Wake them!" The pods opened one by one. The Prathara were humanoid, tall and thin, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. They were weak from their long sleep, confused and disoriented. Medical teams from the Resilience stood ready to help. The last pod contained their leader. Her name was Ashara, and she had been the commander of the world ship when it fled into the dark. She opened her eyes and saw strange beings in strange suits looking down at her. Dr. Nari spoke in the Prathara language, words she had spent decades learning. "Don't be afraid. We heard your message. We came to help." Ashara stared at her, confusion turning to understanding, understanding turning to disbelief. When she finally spoke, her voice was hoarse from disuse. "You came. After all this time, someone actually came." Tears ran down her face. Around the chamber, other Prathara were waking, were realizing that their signal had been answered. Some wept. Others simply stared in shock. They had waited so long, hoped against hope, that many had believed no one would ever find them. Hyun-woo helped Ashara sit up. "We're taking you to our world, Earth. You'll be safe there." "How long?" Ashara asked. "How long have we been asleep?" Dr. Nari hesitated, then told her the truth. 80,000 years. The chamber went silent. 80,000 years. Their entire civilization, their entire species, gone to dust while they slept. They were the last, the absolute last. Ashara looked at Hyun-woo with eyes that had seen her people die, that had carried the weight of being their final hope. "Why did you come? You must have known we were probably dead." "We came because you asked for help," Hyun-woo said simply. That was enough. Then the ship's alarms began to scream. Bora's voice came over their communication devices, tense and frightened. "Commander, we have a problem. Something big just appeared on sensors, something really big." Ashara's face went pale. She grabbed Hyun-woo's arm with surprising strength. No. If it's been 80,000 years since we sent the signal, that means the silence has had time to track it." "Track it? Track what?" "Our message," Ashara whispered, her voice hollow with terror. "We sent a signal into the void. The silence feeds on consciousness, on thought. We called out into the dark. Now it's coming to feed." It came from nothing and everywhere at once. The silence emerged from a dimension humans didn't have words for, a vast thing that made their instruments scream with impossible readings. It wasn't a ship. It wasn't a creature. It was something else entirely. Something that existed in ways that violated every law of physics they understood. Where it moved, stars dimmed. Radio signals ceased. Space itself seemed to forget what it was. On the bridge of the Resilience, Bora stared at her screens and felt ice in her veins. "Commander, I don't know what I'm looking at. It's massive, but it doesn't have a solid form. It's like it's made of folded space and darkness." Hyun-woo ran back to the ship, the Prathara survivors with him. Ashara was crying, her body shaking. "I hoped we'd been wrong. I hoped it had died or moved on or forgotten about us. But it never forgets. It never stops." In orbit above Earth, 80 years in the past, the signal had been detected and recorded. Humanity's message back to the Resilience would take decades to arrive, but they sent it anyway. Then they did something else. They contacted the Galactic Council. The Council convened in emergency session. Representatives who had dismissed the ancient signal now watched as the silence appeared on their long-range sensors. It was moving through the void scar, consuming everything in its path. The Velnar representative stood before the assembly, its voice heavy with dread. The humans woke something that should have stayed sleeping. But the Thurum delegate disagreed. No, this thing was already awake. It's been hunting through the galaxy for millions of years. The Prothera signal drew it to the void scar. The human presence means nothing to it. It will feed and move on. And if it doesn't? An Okath ambassador gestured at the tactical displays. If it follows the humans back to populated space? The council had no answer. They watched their screens and waited to see if humanity's compassion had doomed the galaxy. On the resilience, Hyunwoo made the hardest decision of his life. He gathered his senior staff in the ready room. 17 Prathara sat with them, too weak to move far but needing to hear this. "We can't outrun it," Tae Yang said bluntly. "That thing moves through space in ways our ships can't match. It will catch us." "Then we don't run," Hyunwoo said. "We stay here and buy time." Dr. Nari looked up sharply. "Buy time for what?" "For them." Hyunwoo gestured to the Prathara. "We get them on a shuttle. They head back to Earth at maximum speed. Maybe they make it, maybe they don't, but they have a chance." "And us?" Bora asked, though she already knew the answer. "We stay. We draw the Silence's attention. We give them as much time as we can." Dong Ha, who had spent years doubting this mission, spoke quietly. "How do we fight something like that?" Taeyang leaned back in his chair, his mind already working. "We don't fight it. We trap it. The world ship's power core is failing anyway. If we could overload it at the same time as our own drive, we might be able to create a space-time rupture, a wound in reality." "Would that kill it?" Hyunwoo asked. "No idea, but it might trap it long enough for the shuttle to get away. It's never been tested. It will definitely kill everyone who stays behind to trigger it." The room went silent. They all understood what was being asked. Stay behind and die so 17 strangers might live. Ashara stood, her legs shaking but her voice firm. "No, we can't let you do this. You came all this way to save us. We won't let you die for our sake." Hyunwoo smiled at her, a sad and gentle smile. "You asked for help 80,000 years ago. Everyone heard you, only we answered. Let us finish what we started." "Why?" Ashara's voice broke. "Why would you sacrifice everything for people you don't even know?" Dr. Nari reached out and took the Prathara's hand. "Because someone had to. Because if we only save ourselves, we're already lost. Because 80,000 years ago, you hoped someone would care enough to answer. We did. Now we're going to make sure you survive." The evacuation began immediately. The 17 Prathara were moved to the Resilience's largest shuttle. Bora would pilot it, along with 20 crew members to help care for the survivors. They loaded supplies and medical equipment, everything the Prathara would need for the long journey to Earth. Ashara refused to board at first. She stood at the airlock, tears streaming down her face. "This isn't right. This isn't fair." "Life rarely is," Hyunwoo said, "but you get to live. That's what matters. Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them about the silence. Make sure what we're doing means something." "I will," Ashara promised. "I'll tell them everything. I'll make sure the galaxy knows what humanity sacrificed." The shuttle departed, its engines burning bright as it accelerated away from the void scar. On the bridge, Hyunwoo watched it go and felt a weight lift from his shoulders. Whatever happened next, they had saved 17 lives. That was enough. The silence reached the world ship 3 hours later. It didn't attack or threaten. It simply began to consume, unraveling the ancient vessel molecule by molecule, feeding on the lingering thoughts and memories stored in its computers. Tai Yang worked frantically, setting up the overload sequence. It was delicate work, requiring perfect timing. Too early and the rupture wouldn't form. Too late and the silence would consume them before they could trigger it. Dr. Nari spent her last hours recording messages for Earth, telling them everything she had learned about the Prathara, about the silence, about the wonders of the void scar. If she was going to die, she wanted her knowledge to survive. Hyun-woo stood on the bridge and watched the silence grow closer. He thought about Earth, about the life he had left behind, about the 80 years he had spent crossing the galaxy to answer a call for help. He had no regrets. He had done what he believed was right. "Commander," Tae-yang called out, "we're ready. On your order." The silence touched the world ship. Reality began to unravel. The ancient vessel groaned and screamed as it was consumed by something that existed outside the laws of nature. Hyun-woo looked at his crew. They were scared but determined, every one of them a volunteer who had chosen to stay behind. He was proud of them, proud to die with them. "For the Prathara," he said quietly. "For everyone who ever called out for help and got no answer. Let's show the galaxy that someone was listening." He gave the order. Tae-yang triggered the sequence. The world ship's core overloaded. The Resilience's drive tore itself apart. Two massive energy sources detonated simultaneously, and reality screamed in pain. A wound opened in space, a rupture that should not exist, a scar carved into the fabric of the universe itself. The silence tried to escape, but it was too late. The rupture caught it, held it, trapped it in a prison of folded space and broken physics. It writhed and twisted, confused by something it had never encountered before. The Resilience and everyone aboard was annihilated in an instant, turned to energy and light. 200 humans who had traveled 80 years to answer a cry for help died together, their last act one of defiance against the dark. The wound in space sealed itself slowly, taking the silence with it. The void scar went quiet again. The debris of dead civilizations continued their slow dance through the void. And somewhere in the dark, a small shuttle raced toward Earth, carrying 17 survivors and the memory of humanity's greatest sacrifice. The shuttle limped home. Bora pushed the small vessel beyond its design limits, running the engines hot and praying they wouldn't fail. Behind her, 20 crew members cared for 17 aliens, who were the last survivors of a civilization older than human history. The journey would take decades, even at maximum speed. They would all be old when they arrived, if they arrived at all, but they had to try. 200 people had died to give them this chance. They couldn't waste it. The Prathara spent the journey learning about humanity. They watched archived videos, studied Earth's languages, read its history. What they found astonished them. Ashara sat with Bora on the bridge during one of the pilot's long shifts. The old woman's hands were steady on the controls, even after years of travel. Outside the windows, stars crawled past. "Your species is young," Ashara said quietly. "So young. You've barely left your homeworld. You have no great empire, no ancient wisdom. Yet you crossed the galaxy to save us. Why?" Bora was silent for a long moment. "I guess because someone had to. Every other species in the galaxy heard your signal and did nothing. We couldn't do that. It wouldn't have been right." "Right." Ashara tasted the word. The Prathara believed in doing what was right. We had ethics, philosophy, entire libraries of moral reasoning. But when the silence came and we ran, we sealed ourselves away and hoped someone else would help. You didn't even hesitate." "Commander Hyun-woo hesitated," Bora said with a small smile, "for about 5 seconds. Then he decided we were going, and that was that." 40 years after leaving the void scar, the shuttle entered human space. Earth had changed in the century since the Resilience departed. It had grown, expanded, built new stations and colonies. But when the shuttle transmitted its identification codes and its story, everything stopped. The 17 Prathara were brought to Earth as heroes, the last remnants of a dead civilization. They were given homes, resources, anything they needed. But more importantly, they were given a chance to tell their story. Ashara stood before the United Earth Assembly, a room filled with representatives from every nation and colony. She was old now, her body worn by the long journey, but her voice was strong. I am Ashara of the Prathara. I am the last leader of a people who are now extinct. 80,000 years ago, my civilization sent a distress call into the void. We were dying, running from something we couldn't fight. We hoped someone would answer. We hoped someone would care. She paused, looking around at the assembled humans. Every species in this galaxy heard our call. Every single one. They discussed it. They debated it. They decided we were not worth the risk, not worth the resources. Only you, the youngest species, the newest to the stars, chose to answer. 200 of your people crossed the galaxy for 17 strangers. They spent 80 years traveling to a place called the Void Scar. They found us, they woke us, they saved us. Her voice broke. And then they died so we could live. The assembly sat in silence. Ashara continued. I have traveled your world. I have seen your cities and your people. You are not the strongest species. You are not the wisest. Your technology is primitive compared to the civilizations that ignored our signal. But you have something they lack. You have compassion that isn't conditional. You have courage that doesn't require certainty. You answered a call from the dead because it was the right thing to do. An elderly diplomat stood. She had been one of the mission planners who approved the Dandelion Initiative a century ago. We only did what we hoped someone would do for us. We only showed the kindness we would want shown to our children. Ashara nodded slowly. And that is why you will survive when older species fail. Because you understand something they have forgotten, that the measure of a civilization is not in its weapons or its wealth, but in how it treats those who cannot help themselves. The story of the resilience spread across the Galactic Council. The elder species, who had dismissed humanity as young and foolish, now saw them in a new light. Shame swept through the council chambers. The Velnar integrated human philosophy into their teachings. Their philosophers wrote treatises on illogical compassion and how it might be the highest form of logic. The Thurim built a monument at the Void Scar, a structure of light and crystal that would shine for 1,000,000 years. Its inscription was simple. Here the youngest species taught the oldest what it means to be civilized. But the most important change was quieter. The Galactic Council reformed itself, not as a coalition of cautious survival, but as a union dedicated to helping those who called out for aid. New protocols were established. New fleets were commissioned. If a distress call was heard, someone would answer. 50 years after the Resilience's destruction, Dr. Nari's daughter made a discovery. She was a xenoarchaeologist like her mother, drawn to the mysteries of dead civilizations. She led an expedition to the Void Scar to study the rupture that had trapped the silence. In the debris field, they found something impossible, a time-delayed message encoded by her mother in the final seconds before the ship was destroyed. It had been hidden in a probe that ejected automatically, programmed to broadcast after exactly 50 years. The message was not a goodbye. It was a list. Hundreds of coordinates scattered across the galaxy, other distress signals, other cries for help, some centuries old, some millennia old. Voices calling out into the void with no one to answer. And at the end, her mother's final words. We answered one. Don't stop now. The galaxy is full of voices that need to be heard. Someone has to listen. Let it be us. Let it always be us. The message reached Earth and spread through human space like wildfire. A new initiative was proposed, larger and more ambitious than the Dandelion Project. They would call it the Resilience Corps, a permanent fleet dedicated to answering every distress call in the galaxy, no matter how old, no matter how impossible. Volunteers flooded the recruitment centers, humans who wanted to follow in the footsteps of Commander Hyun Woo and his crew. People who believed that the greatest thing a person could do was help someone who had given up hope. But it wasn't just humans. Other species, inspired by humanity's example, began to volunteer as well. Velnar philosophers who wanted to test their theories about compassion. Thurim engineers who saw the beauty in futile gestures. Even Okath warriors who had once called the mission foolish now requested assignment to the core. The galaxy was changing, slowly but inevitably, shaped by 200 humans who had refused to let a cry for help go unanswered. Years became decades. Decades became centuries. The Resilience Corps grew into one of the largest organizations in known space. They answered calls from the edge of the galaxy and places in between. Sometimes they found survivors. Sometimes they found only graves. But they always answered. At the monument in the Void Scar, Ishara returned one final time before she died. She was ancient now, the last of the Prathara who had been born before the long sleep. Her people were gone, but their memory lived on in the 17 who had survived and in the children they had taught. She placed a flowering branch from Earth beside the names of the Resilience crew, the names of 200 humans who had traveled 80 years to save 17 strangers. She read each name aloud, a final prayer for the dead. Commander Hyun Woo, Dr. Nari, Engineer Tae Yang. On and on, 200 names spoken into the void. When she finished, she looked up at the monument's crystal spire and spoke her final words. You heard us when we were nothing but ghosts. You answered when no one else would. Now we carry your memory forward, and we help your children hear the others who call out in the dark. She died 3 days later, the last Prathara who had known the old world. But her children remained, and humanity remained. And the Resilience Corps remained, always listening, always ready to answer. The galaxy was vast. The darkness was deep. Civilizations rose and fell like waves on an infinite ocean. But somewhere, always, someone was listening. And when a voice cried out for help, no matter how faint, no matter how ancient, no matter how impossible, humanity answered. Because 80,000 years ago, someone asked for help, and 200 humans decided that was enough. That legacy would never die. As long as humans existed, as long as their children spread through the stars, that promise would be kept. When someone needed help, they would come. Always. The Void Scar stood silent, its monuments shining in the dark, a reminder to every species in the galaxy of what humanity had taught them, that the measure of a civilization is not in its power, but in its compassion, not in what it takes, but in what it gives, not in who it saves when it's easy, but in who it saves when it's impossible. The galaxy had heard a signal 80,000 years old, and humans had simply responded. That made all the difference.